Hi, it's Dre Griggs with Obsidian Wisdom. Today I'll answer the question, what retirement plan is best for me? When it comes to retirement plans, there are lots, and I do mean lots of instruments, dozens of them as a matter of fact. Some are pre-tax, some are after-tax, some have restrictions, some have penalties, some are used for growth, some are focusing on risk, aversion, preservation of capital, things like that. It really comes down to understanding what these instruments are, how you can use them, and what your overall goals are. I would like to start by just letting you know that as difficult as it can be to choose the right retirement vehicles and instruments for yourself, it doesn't mean that you should just go with some generic option. This is your retirement plan. These are your goals. On that, we'll go ahead and we will get started. But understand and keep in mind that it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. So the first one is a defined contribution plan. This is your 401k for most of you. This is the most common version of the defined contribution plan. For others of you, you may have a 403b. What you want to understand is this is considered a pre-tax. What pre-tax means is this money goes into your investment before it has been taxed, which lowers your tax rate today, which is beneficial for, many of you. It may be inconsequential for some of you. And so it is something that you do want to take into consideration. Now, what this ultimately means is when you do retire, this money is going to be taxed. Uncle Sam said, I am going to get at least one bite of this apple. You are not going to get this money without me touching it at least one time. If you do a good job, Uncle Sam will get you one time. If you do a less than stellar job, Uncle Sam's going to get 2, 3, 4 bites of the apple. But when it comes to a defined contribution plan, the reason that the 401k is so popular is because we used to have taxes much, much higher than we do today. You probably hear on the radio or the TV all the time where they're like historically low taxes. And it's true. Taxes are historically low. How low, you may be wondering? Well, back in the 80s when they created the defined contribution plan, the 401k, taxes were upwards of 50, 60, 75% of your income could be taxed. Even upwards of 90% of your income could be taxed. So now you're living in an environment where the average person is going to pay much lower in taxes. So this plan works very well. If you think of it, you had $100,000 that you were making in the 1980s, you would have paid to 75% in taxes. And then if you, took that money and forwent your taxes back in the 80s and said, I'll get taxed when I take the money out, when I retire, let's say you retire today, well, that person's going to pay much lower. They're going to pay on average 20% in taxes because the highest our tax rate are, I believe it's 37.5%. So you went from paying upwards of 90% to being maxed out at 37%, where you're going to be paying on average much, much lower in taxes. The difficulty that you and I and many people face today is what's going to happen to taxes in the future. Do we think that we're going to continue going in historical lows? Is it possible that we may pay more in taxes when we retire in the future? That becomes the question where you have to reevaluate each strategy and to see what makes sense. Again, this may be beneficial. If you believe that you'll have significantly lower taxes in the future, if you believe you're going to have significantly lower income in the future, well, then using a pre-tax vehicle makes the most sense. You're not going to pay taxes as much today because you're lowering your taxable income because this money is going in before it even comes to you. But at the same time, this is just something that you want to kind of put a feather in your hat. Again, as we talk about each of these retirement strategies, it's important for us to know that it's not really a one-size-fits-all, as I touched. What that means is there are people out there, there's finance gurus who will literally say that this particular retirement instrument, I will never use it, it never works. But the truth is much more complex than that. Every retirement plan is going to work for a particular situation and a particular need. Now, that's not as sexy as just saying, I will never, ever, ever use this particular retirement instrument, which is fine. But just keep in mind that there are going to be scenarios where one may make sense for you and it doesn't make sense for someone else. Now, I would consider it financial malpractice where if someone just literally, before you asked anyone any questions, you just told them exactly what they needed, versus if you talk to them, get to know them. It would be like if you went to a car lot and someone was like, oh, the Honda Accord is a great car. It has great gas mileage. It's a great price. It's very sturdy. But they didn't ask you, how much you're traveling, what your budget looks like, what kind of vehicle you're interested in, what your family dynamics are. They didn't ask you anything. They were just like, no, you want the Honda, take the Honda. The Honda is great. Right. That salesperson, you'd probably be like, well, that doesn't really make sense. You need to listen to the person first. I feel the same way when it comes to financial planning. You really got to listen to the person first. We'll move on to the next one. So the second one is your traditional independent retirement account, or your IRA. So the IRA is also a pre-tax instrument. It is an option where you don't have to say, well, I'm offering my 401k through my employer, so that's how I get it. While that's great for things like the match, and then the options are a little more limited because the employer just doesn't have to offer you that many options. They usually give you a save, conservative option. They usually give you a moderate, and then give you a higher risk, high growth option. And then that's pretty much where you're going to be choosing from. When it comes to your IRA account, the benefits in that one has to do with the multiple options, a lot more customization when it comes to your pre-tax investments. You will have lots of advantages in the options you can choose. The trade-off is you can't put in the same amount of money each year. You can put in significantly less. I believe it's at $6,000 a year is what you can put into your IRA, where you can get upwards of closer to $20,000 per year into your 401k. So depending on what you're looking for, then you can decide which one makes the most sense for you. But as far as the benefits outside of just the match that most 401ks and 403bs offer, they are the exact same. The money goes in before it is taxed, so it lowers the income that is taxable for you today. The money will be taxed when it comes out in your retirement, and then you'll have that same decision of deciding, is that going to lower my tax burden, or is it going to increase my tax burden? Will my tax burden be the same, so I can do either or? But those are just things you will want to think about. Now, the good thing about the IRA is because it's not tied to your employer, it really doesn't matter where your job is. You can just put this money in this account. This account belongs to you. You opened it at your own brokerage, and you get to put the money in, with any employer that you have. No one's going to be like, well, you can't invest here anymore because you don't work here anymore. That IRA is your account. So that gives you that extra customization, but also gives you that extra control. The average person, the Bureau of Labor says, works in about 13 jobs over their lifetime. So you could end up with 13 different 401ks, or if you had an IRA, you can roll these different accounts into your IRA. So these are just additional options for you. Number 3 is the Roth IRA. This is the first retirement plan for someone that is using money after it has been taxed. So this is your money that is in your bank account. It has already gone through Uncle Sam. And when the money gets put into your bank account from your paycheck, that means Uncle Sam has already taken his cut. So if you invest any money in anything from your bank account, then you know that that money has already been taxed. Now, you may ask, does that also include if I have it like an automatically go into an account? Yes. I'm saying when you have control over the money, that means Uncle Sam has already taxed it. So from that point forward, whether you have the money automatically going into a separate account, such as your Roth IRA, or if you have it go into your personal account, and then you have the money taken out of your personal account to go into your Roth, the Roth is a great vehicle for limiting your taxes in the future. Now, you have to qualify for it, but if you qualify for it, then you're able to, and I think it's about $196,000. I think I had looked it up when I saw it. So for the year 2021, if you're an individual and you make $140,000 a year, or if you're filing jointly and you make $208,000 a year, then you qualify for a Roth account. Now, the Roth has the ability for you to put in $7,000 annually. So it is a good complement, because if you put in $7,000 a year, well, that's not going to get you to the retirement goals that you have. But you shouldn't overlook the fact that this is tax-free money that you can pull out in the future under most circumstances. So when it comes to paying Uncle Sam in taxes, again, I told you, ideally we just pay him one time. So if you've already paid him the money in taxes, the day that you got paid, now you put the money in a tax-free account, it grows tax-free, you take the money out tax-free. Well, that's a great advantage for you. Now, it does have the same prepayment penalties that is with the defined contribution plans. So you can't touch the money until after 59 and a half unless you want to pay the extra penalties. But again, it's a great account for you to use and part of your retirement plan. Then we have a pension plan. Now, pensions are not as common as they used to be, but basically the way the pension work is pretty straightforward. So I have an example and I'll put it on the screen for you. It says, so there's a pension multiplier. So for example, if you have a 2% pension multiplier, you work 30 years, an annual salary of $100,000, your pension would then be equal to $60,000 per year. Now, what that is that's money that you're going to get the rest of your life. Now, there's different choices on how you get the money. Generally, the way they offer it is you get the most money if you decide, I just want the money to come to me and for my life. And then when I die, the money's done. You'll get a higher amount because you're taking on more of the risk. If you're someone who says, you know what, I don't know how long I'm going to live, but I worked really hard for this money, so I want to take on less risk. I want you to take on some risk. So let's just have it where this, no matter what happens, is going to pay me or someone I care about for the next 10 or 20 years. Well, that's going to be a little bit less because you're not taking on all of the risk, but at least you know for sure that there's going to be a payout whether you live through the first 10 or 20 years or not. You're going to make sure someone gets that money. And then the third option would be just like the joint life. So that one would be the least amount as far as your pension payoff. But the way that one would work is you say, look, I'm married. I want to make sure my spouse is taken care of whether I'm here or not. So the insurance or the pension is going to pay out the same monthly income for the rest of both of your lives. So if one of you ends up leaving and the other person is still there, that person will continue to get the same payments no matter what. And so that, because now the risk, the majority of it is kind of on the company, that one is usually the lowest payout. But again, it just really comes down to what you're looking for in your needs. For example, you could have designed your retirement in a way that you're able to say, okay, pay my pension to just me in my life. And then you get the largest amount because you've already set up some contingencies in case something happens to you so that your spouse is fine. And then you both live for 30, 40 years in retirement, have a great time. So you win all over the place and you had nothing to worry about. It really is something that you would consider the lower options. If you don't have another option available, then you want to take more of a safer route. You just don't want to take all that risk that, you're on a plane to the Bahamas, the plane crashes, and then that's it, right? Like your first weekend of retirement. So obviously something like that's not going to happen to you, but it's just the idea that people get nervous and they want to have some certainty. So that's why they offer you a little more certainty, but they take a little bit of the money away. And so you want to keep that in mind. Now, some pensions are even more complex in the sense that they take the amount of money that you've made over the last 3 years or the last 5 years, and not necessarily just your last year or the average over the years. And so you have this option where maybe you can work extra overtime and increase your overall rate. So that way your multiplier is multiplied by a higher salary so you can get yourself a higher pension. Just something to think about. Unfortunately, there's not many companies that are offering pensions. It's less than 20% of our Fortune 500 companies offer pensions today. I can make a video where I go into some of the laws that made a lot of companies remove their pensions. Just some of the ideas that people had back in the 90s that haven't really helped the pension problem the way that they were designed to, where a lot of companies said this burden is just too much, so we're just going to get rid of our pension program. And I don't think anyone intended for that to happen, but that's ultimately what happened. Our next one is real estate. So real estate, again, is also an after tax, so your money has already been taxed. So if you have your income and you're saying, you know what, I don't really have this, big bag of money that I've been able to set up, but I would rather focus on setting up an income stream. If I can maintain the same lifestyle where I get a certain amount of money each month, well, I think I'll still be okay, even if I don't have all of my money, in this big bag invested in the market growing or something of that nature, or I don't have my pension available. Well, if that is you, now you have the option where you're saying, okay, I'm going to get my rental income. I'm going to have maybe 3 or 4 properties. Maybe I just have an apartment complex, or maybe I have like 3 townhouses next to each other, whatever it is. And then each of those brings you in several $1,000s each month that someone pays you in rent. And then that gives you the money that you need to live your lifestyle. And you also have the ability to, sell the properties if something was happening where you just needed access to the money. Maybe you just sell one of the properties and maintain the other two. You have flexibility as far as what you do when it comes to rental income. But generally speaking, rental income is an appreciating asset, which means it increases in value over the years. So that is something that also protects you against inflation, because generally it's going to increase by a rate that's higher than inflation. So it becomes a good option for some of you. If you're very comfortable with real estate, then this works for you. I have clients that have, like 10 rental properties, and they're managed by a property management company, and they don't have to think about it at all. If something breaks, they call the property management company. If something's not paid, the property management company deals with the late fees or the eviction or whatever the process ends up being. And so they just have the income that comes in, and then they just simply are kind of kept informed based on how the property's doing, the value of it, if they're paying off the mortgages. And then that also gives you the extra option of being able to say, on the legacy end of it, as far as passing these properties on, you can sort of avoid probate if you set them up in the right way. But again, that's a topic for like another vehicle. But real estate ends up being a great option. You do have the risk of during the pandemic, you've seen it where there's certain times where they may say, you know what, no one has to pay rent, or there are certain laws where maybe they say you can't increase your rent only by a certain amount. And there's different regulatory concerns that you may have. There's also just the economic concerns. But usually the property goes down in the same rate as the stock market. So they usually go down together. So the risk that you have on that, as far as if there's like a recession, they usually happen together. But there is risk associated with having a real estate property, because that value isn't it's not firm, right? Like the idea that I have equity in my home is not really measurable until you take the equity out. Until then, your values can go up in a boom, they can go down in a bust, and they fluctuate like that. But if you know real estate and you're comfortable with it, it could be a very key part of your retirement plan. Next, we have business ventures. For my entrepreneurs out there, you know that putting money in a business is a great way to grow it. If you put in the sweat equity, the systems, and the team, where you're really able to have your business grow for you. And then that becomes your retirement plan altogether. You simply are growing the business to the largest amount that you have. And then it really comes down to what you want to do. Do you want to just sell the business? Because you can. You could just simply say, all right, I'm ready to retire. So my business for X number over my yearly revenue, and that's my retirement fund. And then you ride off into the sunset, rainbows and Skittles. If you have children and you want to build a legacy and you want to pass it on to your children, or maybe you have employees that you really enjoy the employees and you want to give them part of the business or all of the business, well, then you just have to simply put plans into place where, how are they going to get the business? Are you going to become, like a minority shareholder? Or are you going to sell them all together and they're going to pay you over a period of months or years? And, whatever it is, obviously, so that you don't kill your business by taking out too much of the revenue. But that, again, is another way for you to generate that consistent income in your retirement if you have them paying you through your business, or if you just sell the business altogether. Now, just like most businesses, there is risk associated with that. 90% of businesses fail in the first 5 years. So this is something that if it is your plan, then you would need to start much sooner than, at the very end when you're within 5 years of retirement, because you want to build a sustainable business that you actually could sell and pass on to fund your retirement, or that you may want to maintain and just be like a silent partner, but you have someone else run it, almost like we did with the real estate, where the business isn't managed by you in the day-to-day. Maybe you're the chairman, so you still make a lot of the decisions, but you have a CEO who does the day-to-day operations. Or maybe you make you really could choose any role in the company if you want to stay in it. And if it's something that you're super passionate about and you love it, and that is retirement to you, why not? Run the business actively, stay in it, have fun, and just simply maybe take off a few months of the year where you're then able to maybe travel, spend more time with family, however it makes sense for your retirement. And when it comes also to your business, you have many options as far as the way that your money gets allocated, right? So you could offer a SEP IRA in your business, and that's very common to a traditional IRA. And you can contribute up to have 25% of your compensation or $57,000, whichever one is smaller. So there's lots of different options for you as an employer. Also, if you're offering your employees a 401k, you have some tax advantages there. And then you also could invest in your own 401k as an employee of your company. So you do have lots of different options of ways to get the money out of your business without necessarily having to sell the business. So there is a lot of work and sacrifice when it comes to your business. And when you want to transition into retirement, you definitely want to make sure that you're understand how my business is going to be exited from. Am I just selling it outright? Is it going to pay me? Am I going to manage it actively, passively? Am I going to pass it on to the employees or my children? Lots of questions when it comes to exit strategy planning of your business, but it can be a great way for you to fund your retirement. So here is a good plug for if you want more help understanding your retirement needs, check out my free retirement planning that works video training at obsidianwisdom.com/training. There, I will give you the wisdometric framework that I use for my clients to help them eradicate financial stress, generate a passive income, and build a prosperous retirement strategy. Again, that's obsidianwisdom.com/training. All right, so then we'll keep moving with our list. So the next one we have is a guaranteed income annuity. And I'll say GIA for short, but I'll probably just say annuity. But I'm talking about a guaranteed income annuity. There are lots of versions of annuities today. There's a lot of different ways that they're designed. This one is basically like having a personal pension. It just simply is, as it sounds, a guaranteed income. You give them a certain amount of money. If you do like a deferred annuity, that means you like open it up and then you put a certain amount of money in each month or each year over a period of years. And then you close the annuity. That's called annuitizing it. And then you can't put any more money in once you annuitize your annuity. And then usually in a time of 2 years, then it starts paying you your monthly income for the rest of your life, depending on how much that you put in. You also have the option of just, traditionally some people that have like a large sum of money, maybe you got a bunch of money at the end of your retirement. Maybe you had like your 401k money that came to you. Maybe you had just however the money worked for you, or maybe a business ventures, or you sold your real estate, however you did it, but you don't really have much of an appetite for risk. Well, the annuity isn't really tied to the stock market and the traditional guaranteed income annuity. What happens is you'll give them the bag of money. They will calculate a certain amount, and then they will give you that amount every single month for the rest of your life. And then that's how your annuity is designed. It's just like the pension in the sense that you could set it up the same way. What I mean is you're going to get your highest amount if you just say, this income annuity is based on my life. And then they'll give you your highest payout versus if you say it's based on me and my spouse's life. So both of us will pay out. If something happens to one of us, the other one continues to get payments until they're gone. And then that would be the lowest amount. And then in the middle is usually going to be, look, as long as you make sure that I get 10 years or 20 years of payments to someone that I care about, then we'll call it even. That's usually in the middle. So it just depends again on your risk appetite, how much you have planned in your overall retirement. But generally speaking, an annuity is going to be a risk aversion strategy. You are giving some of the growth that you would get in other areas, but you aren't putting in the risk of losing your money. You're right. You put the money in. Generally speaking, you're going to get at least that out. Now, there is a chance that you have a your life only annuity and then something happens to you again, like the day after you annuitize. Well, then that's usually the end of it. There are some companies that have this rider that you can do where it says, look, if something happens to me before you paid me at least what I put in, you have to give that amount to someone I care about. And so you do have that option. And there are several income annuities that the companies that offer that for you. So you can at least, hedge that loss. But at the same time, you pay for that rider, right? Every rider that they ask is going to increase your fees. And so you do want to keep that in mind when it comes to that. And so the annuity is a great addition if you just want to make sure you have a certain amount of your income that's guaranteed for life. You're going to give on the growth, but you will have the money that's growing risk-free, not tied to the overall economic system. And if you use it in a certain way, you could use your annuity at times when the market is doing bad. And so I've talked in other videos about the sequence of returns, or just the idea that if you pull money out in a down market, it has a exponential impact on decreasing the value in your account quicker. So if you have something not tied to the market, well, then you can stop and taking the money out of your stock portfolio and then use the money that's in something that's not tied to the market. So again, it's just like all things. These are instruments that are designed to work in different situations. And if your situation for that need, it arises, then you can definitely use it. Next, and we're coming really close to the end, we're talking about a lot of different retirement options as far as you figure out which one's the best for you. We'll talk about cash value life insurance. So this one is a polarizing topic. I can hear all of the finance gurus being upset about this one, but it does have a value. Now, this one, interesting enough, is one that you have to qualify for. And what that means is if you're within a certain age and a certain health, then you can get it because it's life insurance. So there's certain conditions that will disqualify you from getting life insurance. If you fall into that category, then this option wouldn't even be an option. But if you're someone who's at an age and a health where you're able to qualify for cash value life insurance, you have the ability to grow another stream of tax-free income. Much like the Roth IRA, this is after-tax money, but when you pull it out, at least the money that you put in, you wouldn't, in most situations, you wouldn't have that income tax. Now, there's sometimes where they'll tax the growth, but it really depends on how the cash value life insurance was structured. Now, the thing about this one is there are fees and setting it up and ongoing fees from, paying the insurance companies and the actuaries and the agents and things like that. So you do want to keep that in mind. The way I usually describe it is cash value life insurance is much like a mortgage, where you're going to pay a certain amount. If you pay $1,000 a month, let's say in the beginning, $500 goes towards your principal and interest and $500 goes towards your fees, right? So the fees and taxes. So your balance only went down $500, even though you paid $1,000. That's going to happen for most of the first maybe 5 to 10 years of your mortgage. Then after that, you'll pay the same $1,000, but $900 or so will go towards your principal, where that money comes, straight on your balance. And then only $100 goes towards like the fees and the different things to keep your mortgage going. And so cash value life insurance is much the same way. Those first 5 or 10 years, you're not going to really grow much of a cash value because most of the money is going to go towards a lot of the fees. But at some point, you will have covered most of the fees, and then the majority of your money will go towards the cash value. And so this is something that if you started early, that you would be committed to this strategy. You're not going to see the benefits early on, but at the same time, if you get it while you qualify, this will be something that you will be able to access outside of the stock market. It generally doesn't flow with the stock market. It's going to increase based on just the overall structure of it. And so that is an extra advantage for you. Also a stream of tax-free income. Generally speaking, I would say that this is going to be something that you do after you've already maxed out your defined contribution plans, after you've already maxed out your IRA, after you've already maxed out your Roth. This is usually something that I would see and recommend doing much later in your process. This is not something that's going to be in the forefront of your retirement planning. It is something that you could use and take advantage of, but generally speaking, it's not something that you would be thinking firsthand. And the reason, as we mentioned, you're going to be giving the money with very little growth at the beginning. And then at some point, the growth does start to really compound, just like paying off a mortgage or even a car payment. But at the same time, you don't really get this for the growth. You're not trying to get 10, 15% growth. You're going to be okay with like a 3% growth because this is your safe money. So it's just something that you want to kind of keep in mind on that. And also, I just don't generally see people starting from there, but it is something that if you're wealthy and you're just trying to find ways to have tax-free income, well, then this may be something for you. What I will ultimately say is my final thoughts on the best retirement plan for you is, as you've seen, it really depends on what your needs are. More times than not, it is a combination of them. You want to have some money that's pre-tax, money that won't be taxed now to lower your income and your taxes today, but you'll be taxed later. So you have some money that may be in a 401k or your traditional IRA, your 403b. Then you want to have some money that maybe you already have paid taxes on and you want on the after-tax strategy. This could be your Roth or it could be just traditional investments or real estate, money that's already been taxed. So now you have this ability to grow some money that's already been taxed so you don't have to worry about being taxed in the future. You also don't have the prepayment penalty. Maybe you decide that you don't want to retire at 59 and a half. Maybe you want to retire at 50 and you want the ability to access some of your retirement money. At the same time, some of you may be more risk adverse. So you want to have money that's not tied to the overall economy, but that money gives you the ability to guarantee a certain income. So that would be like your annuity or your pension or the cash value life insurance. These are options that are a little bit safer. They don't grow as much. You don't get them from growth, right? If we're just being direct. So you want to make sure that you just structure the best retirement plan for you using all of the different vehicles possible. Each of them has a benefit. Each of them has a cost. And so if you cover certain things that are the overall risk to retirement planning, and I will add that video in the description below where I talk about the main key risks to retirement, you will be able to hedge some of these risks. You'll be able to get certain financial instruments to take care of each of them. And so if you need more help understanding your retirement needs, I invite you to check out my free retirement planning that works video training at obsidianwisdom.com/training. And again, I'll share my Wisdomites framework, which will help you eradicate financial debt, generate a passive income, and build a prosperous retirement strategy. Until next time, Wisdomites, remember, wisdom is asking the right questions to allow yourself to get the right answers. Keep asking those questions and you will keep getting those answers. Continue blessings.